Good afternoon, good evening, and a very happy Wednesday, guys. We are back once more, walking down a slightly darker path than we usually do here on Rise and Shine. And I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Adega Outlaw. How are you doing?
Better this time because I remembered to take the headphones off. With a loud intro, I had them in front of my face, looking at them, listening to it.
It works really well in the morning as I wake up.
Oh yeah,
I love it. Let's see who we have got today. We've got Keely Chow, Roll Tide Keely, good to see you. We've got Sultan Al Fahim, great to see you as well. We've got Brandon the Anime Guy, good afternoon. Deepbud Martin, hello love, good to see you. Salty Texas C, hey, great to see you. We had a fantastic show last night, had a brilliant time. And big thank you to Adega for joining us as well. It was great to have you there. Let's see, we've got Psychodwarf 9. Good afternoon, love. Hello. Dave Bob, great to see you. We've got Daniel as well. Good afternoon. Andy Masterson, great to see you as well. Good to see everybody. Let's see, I'm not missing anybody. I know I saw Leia Rose and the lovely Gun Bunny. Hello, ladies. Nearsighted Cyclops is in as well. Great to see you. And I think that was everybody. Yeah, I think that's everybody so far.
Big Raj or
I did not. No, I did not. Hello, guys.
Snuck in under the radar.
Sneaky, very sneaky. Great to see you as always. And Company says it's early enough. I shouldn't have problems sleeping tonight. I hope not. We're not here to scare us so much as to educate. I think. Oh, Adega's here to scare. I'm here to educate.
Not necessarily today. No. Sometimes, not today.
Adega does it so much better, though. So I think he's got the market cornered on that. But what I wanted to cover today, we were kind of chatting as a group and we were going to decide, what we wanted to cover first because there were a lot of topics that we came up with last time we did the first show. So I thought we would kind of kick things off properly and talk about male serial killers. Because there is so much to cover with them. It was a bit of a weird request that I gave people. I said, pick your favourite.
Right.
Is it possible to have a favourite serial killer? I don't know.
I have him on my T-shirt.
I suppose the most infamous would be the best way to put it. And Dave Bob says, Adega!
The rooster is in the house.
Heck yes. Great to see everybody. Thank you for joining us. So, would you like to start?
You got a super chat already.
I do. Let me grab that before we talk serial killers. A massive thank you to Daniel and a good afternoon. Great to see you. He says maybe a spooky purple ghost tales another day. We could do that. Every time Halloween rolls around, I tend to do a dedicated show all about ghost stories and ghostly encounters. So, yeah, always love to talk the supernatural. So thank you for that, Daniel. Really appreciate it. And hello, we've got Spiking Madness, Eldrick Lord Haster, and the lovely Apollonius Minion. Great to see you guys. Welcome.
Hail, Haster.
Hail. So
Haster's a good guy. I got to know him a little bit.
He is, yes, and another talented writer as well.
Which I am grateful that he actually decided to gain some self-confidence and put it out there. Because you know me, if people have a talent, they need to share it. Stop being afraid.
Yes, it's not easy though. As you say, you want the recognition, but at the same time, you're not sure about putting yourself out there. But I'm really glad that he did.
Yep.
And Zakarot 315, hey, good to see you. So, would you like to kick things off today, or would you prefer me to take the lead?
I could certainly try. Now, like she said, I decided to go for someone obscure, but some of you guys may have heard of this serial killer. It's interesting. There's a lot of really twisted people that come out of Europe and the Far East or Near East. They're just killers everywhere. But I picked this guy because of the particular circumstances that involved him. He's a little weird. Well, they're all weird, but this guy's kind of peculiar. And actually, you know me enough, Purple. I rarely go to Wikipedia, but this time, whoever did the Wikipedia actually did a fairly good job.
Nice.
Some of it's translated from Russian, so I'm good. There's just a little hiccup spots, but nothing really big. So if you wanted to follow along, we are looking at Alexander Pushinskin.
Great choice.
Yeah, he's actually younger than I am. Sicko. He was born the 9th of April, 1974. And just like all serial killers, he had a funky childhood. So let's go ahead and get into this. Early life. Pushinskin grew up, and if I can't pronounce the streets of the names of Russian, flog me, because I need to learn. Krunskaya Street in Moscow. He lived there with his mother, younger sister, her husband, and their son in a 2-bedroom apartment, so it was kind of crowded, on the 5th floor, 6-minute walk north end of Vesta Park. Pushkin is remembered to have been an initially sociable child. However, this changed following an incident in which Pushkin fell backwards on a swing. So you imagine he's riding a swing, fell off, and then the swing came back and smacked him in the forehead. Experts speculate that this event damaged the frontal cortex of his brain. Now, coming to you from the doctor's standpoint, there are a couple of different things that we have noticed in neuroscience when it comes to people actually having derangements from normal. You can train your brain to be deranged. So people say their brain was born that way. That's a lie. It's been conditioned to be that way, or it's been traumatized.
So this can actually be learned behavior?
It can be, yeah. In many cases, though, with these people, it's the back of the brain that's been damaged in one way or another. There's aberrant mental impulses going, so the whole system, everything from your immune system to higher reasoning, is altered because of damage back there. His is the frontal, and most of you know that's the larger part of our brains as compared to an animal brain, because we use language and higher reasoning and stuff. His got smackadoodled, and that's a technical phrase, smackadoodled.
Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome. And so they figured it kind of twisted him a little bit. Since that time, Pushkin would, since he was still a child, the damage would have been more severe, which in some cases is actually true. If in a couple of months I'm going to be having a top 5s video comes out, it's going to have a little bit of brain damage stuff in there. And so there's alterations to this, but you'll see how the brain adapts. Anyway, since he was young, it was a little more severe. And I just explained all the rest of that. Let's see. Following this accident, Pushkin frequently became hostile and impulsive. His mother soon decided to transfer him from his mainstream school that he was attending to one for children with learning disabilities. Prior to his transfer, children from a mainstream school were known to have physically and verbally bullied Pushkin, referring to him as that retard. Now, you may know more about this than I do. I know that at least the majority, but I can't say all, of these people who end up being deviants towards life, the murderers, the abusers, those type of things, are often bullied as children. But I don't know if all of them are. I think that's the majority.
Yes, it does seem to be like one of the things that they look for. There's a list of things that seem to fall into the category of creating these particular types of people. A terrible childhood, as you say, bullying, cruelty to animals. All of these things seem to be part of the ingredients that form that they're especially the early years. It's what they're used to, or what they are subjected to.
I think universally, though, when you mention the families, all of them have a bad relationship with their father.
Hmm.
You would think mother, but it's either an absent father or a bad father. Um, Mainly because, and I've learned this, it sounds counterintuitive, but it is actually fact, that the male fatherhood figure is the teacher of empathy,
Hmm.
not compassion, but empathy. There's a difference. And for someone to be able to see and have emotions for somebody else's emotions, put themselves in the other person's shoes, is something that is enhanced by a father figure far more than a mother. And it's like I said, it sounds counterintuitive, but this is actually the case. It explains a lot of what's going on in the world with so many different communities that have absent fathers and the crime rate and damage that's going on. Anyway, we're going to get back in this because we know his dad was gone and he was living with a stepdad, and we don't know the relationship he had with them. At least I wasn't able to find it. Okay. We were just told that he was called retarded by the children. This abuse served to intensify Pushkin's rage and hostility. Upon reaching early adolescence, his maternal grandfather recognized that he was highly intelligent and felt that his innate talents were being wasted. As he wasn't involved in any activities at home, and the school he was enrolled with focused more on overcoming disability than promoting achievement, which
Hmm.
is most of schools nowadays anyway. They're not promoting excellence, but I digress. Okay, his grandfather took him to live in his home and encouraged him to pursue intellectual pursuits outside of school. This is where things start to get interesting with this guy. The deepest of these interests was chess. Paczynski was taught how to play, and after demonstrating his ability, was introduced to the exhibition games against elderly men who played publicly in the Besta Park. In Besta Park, sorry, not the Besta Park. It turned out that he was an outstanding chess player, and for the first time, he found a channel for his aggression when dominating the chessboard in all of his games. Uh, there's a pun there for Russian, but I'm going to let that one go.
Yes, you don't really think of chess as an aggressive game, but if that was his outlet,
Yeah,
fair
yeah,
play.
right. Well, they called him the chessboard killer for a reason. So,
Yes, yes, they did.
okay, this continued. Even when he played this, the school children were still bullying him throughout his adolescence, and he suffered an emotional blow when, towards the end of this period, his grandfather died, and then goes, another father figure. He was left to return to his mother's home, after which she enrolled the student again into the regular classes. According to reports, the death of his grandfather greatly affected him. In an effort to both and dull the pain with the loss, as well as calm his severe aggressive tendencies, he began to consume large quantities of vodka. Anyone surprised at that?
Nope, nope, not
Right.
at all.
We're getting towards where I shouldn't say the fun stuff, but the dark stuff starts. He continued to play chess both at home um, and with others in the exhibitions at the park. Now joining the other men in drinking vodka as well, since he was old enough, apparently. I don't know what the rules are in Russia, but he was drinking. And unlike everyone else, he could play greatly without being affected by the alcohol. So he kept his skills while the old guys are just stumbling around. It was at this time he began to develop a more sinister hobby that, at that time, remained unknown to anyone. However, he knew he was going to come into contact with children. He would take a video camera along, and this is where one of those signs that they always look for, and he would proceed to threaten them. So he's recording himself threatening children. On one occasion, that has since been made public, I guess you could find this somewhere in Russia, he held a young child by the leg upside down, and said to the camera, "You are in my power. I'm going to drop you from the window, and you will fall 15 meters to your death."
Oh my gosh.
He then watched these videos repeatedly to affirm his power. However, by 1992, The practice had become insufficient to satisfy his urges, oftentimes like any type of abuse, whether it be chemical or wasting time or what have you. Eventually, it's the satisfaction goes away, and you seek deeper, more intense thrills, and that's what he was going to.
Yes, you escalate, absolutely.
Right. Russian media have speculated that he was motivated in part by a macabre competition with another notorious, and I almost picked this guy. You guys might know him, another Russian serial killer, Andrea Chikolev, Rostov Ripper.
Is this the Iceman killer?
He killed children and women and raped a lot of them.
Oof.
12 years old, or even younger than that. It was 52. So he saw this guy in the news and thought, he kind of got inspired. And he was a chess player. And on the chessboard, those of you who know it, or checkers, has 64 squares. So he decided it was time to fill the chessboard. Pushkin committed his first homicide on 27th July 1992 when he was 18. The victim was Mikhail Odysee. They had been classmates, and I guess this is one of the ones where he could actually talk to. And he had invited Odysee on a killing expedition. He had openly told Pachistik that he wanted to kill someone and suggested that they cooperate in the act. The other kid had tagged along, half in jest, not sure what to expect. When Pushkin realized that he was not serious about killing, the other kid realized he wasn't. I'll read it exactly. I'm trying to avoid using their names. When Pushkin realized that Odysee was not serious about killing, he killed Odysee instead. Hey, there's no victims here. Might as well go for my buddy. Didn't care. All right. Here's where the killings continue. This is it. I'd never heard of anyone doing this before. But he targeted elderly people, the homeless men, by luring them. I guess they were easy victims, and you can understand why. By luring them with offers of free vodka. So you have a drinking buddy. After drinking with them, he would throw them down into the sewers in the park. Apparently it was a big drop, no way out. He just disposed of them. Got rid of the body, he got his kicks. As Pushkin said, the fact that the victims had disappeared had no longer been able to satisfy him. Mm-hmm. Quote, I needed more emotions. Since this moment, he had killed them with repeated blows to the head with a hammer. In what became his trademark or signature, he would then push a vodka bottle into the gaping wound in their skulls.
Oh my.
He also targeted young men, children, and women.
Yes, and that was something that confused the police, if I remember correctly, because he didn't really have a particular type of victim. He was one of those killers that changed victim throughout his crimes. Right.
Because other than a bottle in the skull, the MO didn't seem to fit. It wasn't, always going for the women. Wasn't a father trying to kill. Wasn't children that he was torturing. It was just whoever he can get a hold of.
Yes, it was anybody who could, who we could dispose of.
Right. There was kind of a method to his madness, if you could say that. He did the hammer to the back of the head in order to keep surprised, and for some reason, the physics prevented him from getting blood splatter. So that's how he continued to do it for a while. Towards the end of the rest, the murder of Marina Moskalevic, this is how he got caught. She was 36 in June 2006, was his last, when her body was found in Bristol Park, complete with the trademark injuries. A metro ticket was found in her possession that led authorities to review the surveillance tape footage from the Moscow metro system, where she was filmed just hours before her death, walking on the platform, accompanied by Pushkin. So he must have stalked them from quite a ways. According to the documentary Serial Killers, I've never seen it, I don't know if you have, once he was apprehended, he led the police to the scenes of many of his crimes. Like, he was very cooperative, and the Russians, they like to record these things, so it's all on video for any of you who can understand Russian. But you could see him pointing out all these grave sites, or not grave sites, but murder scenes.
Yes, and that's something that I've noticed with a lot of serial killers as well. Once they get caught, they love the attention that they get, and they like to brag about what they've done.
Yeah, his thing, I don't think it was so much bragging, because they were going to charge him with a certain amount of deaths. I think it was 49, and he says, "No, you got it wrong." He said to up it to 60, but there were 3 that survived. It was probably the ones that were jumped in the sewer, because having a vodka bottle shoved in the back of your skull, you're not going to survive that.
No.
But it was probably a couple of these drunks that were dumped into the sewer, and they probably woke up thinking, "Oh, I fell in," but it was actually victims of his. But his thing was, it was weird. I hadn't heard this. Let me get to the exact quote. "In all cases, I killed for only one reason. I killed in order to live. Because when you kill, you want to live. For me, life without murder is like life without food for you. I felt like a father of all these people, since it was me who opened the door for them to another world."
That's almost taking on a kind of god complex.
Right. And considering he had always been pushed around as a kid, and the head trauma and everything else. But that is Alexander, killer of at least 60.
Yes, and it's terrifying to see how close he actually got to his actual goal once you realise. Do you think that there were any that that could have been attributed to him that he didn't get charged with? Presumably, because he had a goal, he would have known exactly how many people were victims he had.
He had a chessboard that he was marking off. He wanted to fill it, and he didn't get it, and he told him that he didn't get it. So I believe him, just because the way he is, that he didn't hit the 64. But he also has said, hey, you know what, just the way he felt about it, that he told him even if he hit the 64, he figured he would go on and continue to kill after that.
Right.
And their punishment was harsh. You guys know that some countries are pretty brutal. In murderers, we usually just slap in jail. We used to off them, which I think is, I'm for capital punishment in some cases. I know some people aren't. And it's not necessarily as a form of retribution or justice as much as it is getting these people out of society's hair. You don't have to feed them. You don't have to pay all this money to house them. And then you don't have to worry about them. And the victims have some type of reprieve, the victims' families. But what they did with him, I think it was the first 12 years. I am not going to look it up. Because I moved on from that page. I think it was the first 12 years they had him in a glass cell in solitary confinement.
Wow. So almost Hannibal Lecter-like.
Yeah, very, very much. And maybe that's where they got the idea for that. Like the James Bond things. They actually put him in a glass cell so they could watch him, so he can't hurt himself in the bars. And he was in could you imagine solitary for 12 years? I know they're arranged, but gosh, you could never let that person out again.
No, never. And I've heard that even short periods of solitary confinement are incredibly detrimental to the human mind.
Right.
So if he wasn't messed up before, he certainly was then.
Yeah. Let's scramble that egg a little bit more.
Oh my God, that was a fantastic choice. Yeah, as you say, this is somebody that he was one of the rarer ones because he did not have, as people have pointed out in the chat, he didn't have a particular victim type. It was more who he could get away with, who was vulnerable. So it was almost like a hunter stalking people rather than going after a particular, type of person.
right? Which makes me worry about Dave Bob because he says he's eaten every kind of animal. So, like, well, you haven't ate humans yet, so or maybe he has. I don't know. He scares me sometimes. I've seen his gun collection.
I have too. Dave Bob has an amazing collection.
Don't want to bug you, Dave.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Adega. Just before I get on to my selection, we have had a couple more super chats come in. So let me say a massive thank you to Salty Texas C. He sent us a 199 super chat. He says, "Happy nearly 2K subs. Thank you, and a very early birthday. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that." And on the stream element side, we've also had a $1 tip from Anonymous. Didn't leave a message, but thank you so much, Anonymous. I really appreciate that. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you, guys. Absolutely had
She deserves it.
No, you guys,
Yes.
you guys are the best. Like I've said, I've said it many times before. I couldn't do this without you guys. So thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us. So let me share my choice of the day. I can
No,
get
I'm
this
scared.
to pull up. There we go. So it is. Where is he? There he is. So I will pull this up and talk about him. So, I have decided to go for a killer from my country, and he is the Yorkshire Ripper, otherwise known as Peter Sutcliffe. So, I will leave this up and talk a little bit about him and his crimes. And there was also a kind of copycat killer that was linked to him, and he also had a very disturbing friendship with another very infamous person, but I will get to that in just a little bit. So, Peter Sutcliffe was born into a working class family, as a lot of people were. He is from West Riding in Yorkshire. Very, very normal family he had. Pretty normal upbringing. He wasn't a particularly great student. He was considered to be quite a loner. He left school at 15. Didn't really have any, great qualifications when he left, so he went straight into jobs. He did a lot of menial jobs. Some of the one of the jobs he had was a grave digger. He also,
There we go.
yeah, you can see. It's funny how they all kind of gravitate towards these sort of things.
I also think the Widow Peak is a dead giveaway, but that, it's just sorry.
He was a bizarre looking guy, and he was actually tiny. I think it gives his stats there. I think he was 5'7", I believe, which is quite short for a guy. And I think that's one of his things. As when I get to talking about his crime, you'll realize why he targeted the people that he did. But as I said, he was he was a very normal person. He didn't really have any aspirations as such. He then went on to work. He worked in factories, and he also became a heavy goods driver. And that's pretty much how he stayed. He was a HGV driver, and that was his main job for pretty much his entire adult life. He is infamous because he is known pretty much all around the world as the Yorkshire Ripper. Now, his crimes ranged between 1975 and 1980, so this is quite a recent in history. He's very well known in the UK for what he did, and he was found guilty of murdering 13 women, but he was also attempted to kill 7 others in that time. So he was quite prolific. He would at first stalk his chosen victims. He always attacked from behind, similar to the killer that you talked about. It was always he would try to take his victims by surprise, and his victims were always female. He had a absolute hatred for women. He mainly targeted prostitutes, but to Peter Sutcliffe, pretty much all women were prostitutes because of the way he felt about them. And the one thing that is most noted in this particular case, one, it was the biggest and most extensive manhunt in British history, and West Yorkshire Police were criticised terribly for the way that they handled this particular case. Peter Sutcliffe himself was actually interviewed 9 times over the course of the 5 years that he was out killing. Each of these times he was released without charge, and it's really tarnished their reputation, and for good reason. I think in 2019, The Guardian came out and covered this case and said the manhunt had been stunningly mishandled. Since his conviction, which was in 1981, Sutcliffe has also been linked to a number of unsolved murders and attacks. Now, these he did not admit to, because when he went to trial, he actually claimed diminished responsibility. So he tried to claim basically insanity. They didn't believe him, of course, but eventually he did get transferred from prison to Broadmoor Hospital, which is a very high security mental hospital. I think he moved there in March of 1984, I believe, and he was diagnosed with being paranoid schizophrenia.
No surprises there.
Yes. He, in the time that he was there, put in several appeals to be released, and each time they were dismissed. He was told that he was going to serve the whole sentence. He would never be released from custody. And it was ruled that he was mentally fit to return to prison, which he eventually did. There is a slightly happy note, if you could say it's a happy note. He is thankfully no longer with us. He actually died on the 13th of November 2020 from COVID-related complications at the age of 74. So
the virus got him a lot faster than what the Bobbies did.
Exactly. So thankfully, he is no longer with us. But as I say, he is one of the most famous killers that we have, not just for what he did, but and the way he attacked his victims, which I'll go into in just a minute. But for the way that the case was so badly handled, and the fact that he was interviewed multiple times, victims of his who actually, described him, he was still not caught. And he went on to kill several times after.
That seems to happen. You can't claim that incompetent police are a thing of just England, though, because recently, I don't know if you heard of the mass shooting that happened in California, just killed 6 people. The guy was released recently, and even though the prosecutors were saying, you can't let this guy go, he's a risk. And the judge said, nah, let him go. So he went boom, 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 boom. That was just a couple days ago.
Yes, I did see that actually. Yes. And this seems to be, we see this a lot, especially with people who are clearly disturbed. They get second chances and third chances, and, they go on and destroy even more lives when they could have been stopped early on in their careers.
Yep.
So we had, as I say, multiple attacks. So it's believed there were 23 altogether that he did over the course of the 5 years. So the 13 murders and then 10 further attacks where his victims actually survived and got away. Peter Sutcliffe's weapon of choice, similar to the previous one, was actually a hammer. So he would always attack his victims from behind if he could, striking them over the head to incapacitate them, and then he would either strangle them or he would stab them in a frenzied attack.
Okay, just a quick. Everyone, if you get a chance to rewind it, to listen to how she says that. Strangle him. Stab him. I worry about you, Purple. You do that with far too much enthusiasm. Anyway, I'll be quiet now.
I'm just trying to sell it for the audience, Adega. You know me, she says. Yeah.
Shouldn't have come with that.
But yes, that was his kind of his MO. As I say, he always targeted women. Originally, he targeted just lone women, so anybody that he kind of saw out and about. If they were on, say, a country lane as he was driving past, he would kind of attack. These were all generally always random, so it wasn't people or women that he had seen that he stalked. It was very much a crime of opportunity that he did. None of these women, I believe, that he knew, and he then found out or realized that it was much easier, rather than attacking women on the street, to attack sex workers, because they were a lot more vulnerable. They were a lot more willing to get into the cab of his truck as well, where he would have a lot more control of the situation. Fortunately, a lot of his victims also fought back, because I say he was not a particularly physically empowering guy. He was quite slight. He was relatively short for a man. So a lot of his victims did actually fight back and escape from him. Some of them with very serious injuries, but they did live to tell the police and give a detailed description of the man who'd attacked them. So you'd think, with such detailed descriptions and eyewitness accounts from the victims, that he would have been caught so much sooner, but sadly he was
I was
not.
just going to say that. They should have been able to give a full description. I mean, the Widow Peak, like I said, but he's short, slight. It should have been fairly easy, but wow.
Psychodwarf said, "Sold it." Thank you, Psychodwarf. But I did mention that there was a more disturbing connection that Pete Sutcliffe had. And you and probably a lot of other people listening will be very familiar with the name of Jimmy Savile, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Now,
Just inhuman.
he was absolutely vile. And these two fellows actually struck up a very unlikely friendship whilst he was in Broadmoor, it's believed. Now, because both of them are thankfully no longer with us, we don't know the full extent of what they talked about. Jimmy Savile, being who he was not one of the kind of regular inmates. He was treated much better. He had a very plush apartment there. He had the best food. He was basically treated like a celebrity whilst he was in this mental asylum.
Right, probably trained at Disney too. Did I say that?
You can see a pattern forming here, can't we? But yes, that is one of the things that came out, obviously, long after Jimmy Savile shuffled off this mortal coil, thankfully. But yes, we don't know the full extent.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt, which actually gives me... You heard of the Church of the Final Judgment? You ever hear me talk about them?
I did.
They also were loosely associated with Savile, with human sacrifice and cannibalism and murder, who was also associated with, which we thought if we were going to have time, I mentioned his name. I can't remember. It's on the top of my head.
We were going to talk about Manson after.
Manson. Yep. So they're all connected loosely, but there's also a CIA organization as well that kind of involved. But anyway, I'll be quiet now.
Yes. Sadaku24 said Jimmy was in Broadmoor. What for? He was a proponent of releasing people so he could come and go as he pleased. That's why he had a connection to Broadmoor, and he pretty much because of his charity work. He was very trusted. So he actually had a place that if he wished to stay there, he had an apartment there on the grounds, and he had access to pretty much anybody he wanted to talk to. And over the course of the time that the two were there, they were seen talking to each other. Now, we don't know what they talked about. I probably would rather not know, but yeah, it's kind of sick to think about, really. So that is my choice. I did mention that there also was a kind of, if not copycat, one that is sort of linked. It was the Ipswich killer known as the Suffolk Strangler, and this is a much more recent one. This actually took place between the 30th of October and the 10th of December 2006, and this was a guy by the name of Stephen Wright, who also targeted sex workers and strangled them. So he's kind of linked in the same class as Sutcliffe because of the victim that they both chose and the mode of killing.
Right. Ugh. It's a dangerous profession.
Yes, it really is. Yeah, and this is actually one of the cases that kind of brought into the light, a protection for anybody who does this type of work. It really kind of shone a spotlight on how vulnerable they actually are.
Which I have a question for English language. Jack the Ripper, we know is the Ripper, and it has to do with, I would imagine, morphology or syntax of Ripper. Why is the word Ripper used? Because obviously this guy here is to give association for a murderer, but Jack the Ripper, why was he originally called that?
I would imagine because of the way that the victims were killed. So especially with Jack the Ripper, especially the later victims, which I always believe were actually done by a copycat killer, because it was a much more frenzied attack. That it wasn't as clean, yeah. But the at least the first initial victims always had their throats slashed. So that's where the Ripper came from, and I believe he actually named himself in the letters that were sent. He called himself Jack the Ripper.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh, that makes sense. I just I hear it used over and over, and obviously it's like we hear there was originally at Watergate. Now everything's gate this, gate that. And come on, use something else. But I didn't understand the Rip. But if he called himself that, because I haven't studied him enough to know.
Yes, and Sadaku is a really good question. So I asked this earlier, but was the Yorkshire Ripper actually a copycat killer from Jack the Ripper? I don't believe so. Yorkshire Ripper predominantly used different weapons. Like I said, he struck his victims from behind with a hammer usually. He strangled a lot of his victims, but he also stabbed them with pretty much what he had to hand, which was usually a screwdriver, which I think is where the Ripper part comes in. He would, in a frenzied attack, he would stab them, whether they were either alive or dying at the time. So that's where that comes from. Yeah, I don't believe that Sutcliffe ever named himself that. It was from the tabloids that gave him that nickname. Whereas a lot of serial killers like to name themselves, like Zodiac Killer, that sort of thing.
Right.
But yes, I always found it a fascinating case. There is a really great documentary out there about him that really goes into the detail. It talks to the victims who survived and what they went through, and it talks to the police and the level that they went through just to find him. And eventually they actually just got lucky. Like I said, he'd been interviewed multiple times over the years, and I think he was beginning to believe that he was uncatchable. He was one of those who thought he'd outsmarted the police. He was just so clever.
Had they used the same investigative team for most of it, or was, because I'm thinking, well, they interviewed him once, Second time around, you would kind of have suspicions. So to me, it makes it sound like they got different teams to do that. They were all led to a certain area, but he fooled them. So I don't know.
Yes. That was probably the case because, as I say, his attacks weren't always in the same location. So he had attacks in Leeds, Bradford, Manchester, Huddersfield, Halifax, Knightley, and Silsden.
I got it right.
So there was a lot of, especially back in the 70s and 80s, the police forces didn't have the communication that they have now, so they couldn't, kind of compare notes as it was.
Wow.
But thankfully, they have gotten much better. And if I believe correctly, the case notes on him, they took up in pretty much an entire floor with all the information that people called in, and sightings that people had seen, and then you had all the hoaxes that people sent in as well, and it just bogged them down because they had to obviously investigate every piece of information that came in.
Right. That has to be a tough job. Not only just finding them, but to interview someone who got away.
Mm-hmm.
I think you know about it. I don't want to get into details on your show, but I have seen the immediate aftermath of an attempt,
Mm-hmm.
and what those people have gone through. It just, yeah, I kind of feel for the cops in some ways. We may point a finger at them, but it's like you said, when their workload is so high on so many tips,
Mm-hmm.
and they have emotional people trying to give testimony, and they're so frantic and afraid that they won't remember. They probably wouldn't even remember what they got hit by. Was it a knife? Was it a screwdriver? Was it a hammer?
Mm-hmm.
Just, they're on fight or flight, and all the details tend to miss in the brain. It's more on survival and get away, instead of, oh yeah, you got a mustache, and you smell like bad soap, and just those things.
Yes, absolutely. They were also hindered quite badly by the tabloids as well. Once they got wind of what was happening, they came under very heavy scrutiny. And obviously, this is a huge story, and they ran with it, and they were getting conflicting information, and it was just really muddying the water for the investigation for them.
Right.
Gave a really good comment. He said, this is nothing in comparison to Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman is one that I am going to definitely talk about. I think when we talk about doctors and nurses, and the angel of death archetype that we have with killers as well. But yes, Shipman, just the scale of his crimes was enormous.
There's several women that are far exceed this as well. People don't
Mm-hmm.
think of being serial killers, but there have been quite a few.
Yes,
Don't
yes.
put it in the forefront, because you can't. There's that instinct in people to have a softer heart towards a woman, not seeing them as horrific monsters deep inside. And there's that one I always bring up, because she was partly an inspiration for the Blood Witch, the one who is the one of the aristocrats, because she's not the only one, a woman that would kill
Yes,
young girls.
Elizabeth Bathory.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
numbers for her, they range almost to 300, depending on the source. Some say only 13, some say 300. I figure it's probably somewhere in between, but still, some of these people, and I hate to say it, and there's the list of politicians who have done far more than that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, once you scratch below the surface, you realize just how corrupt this world really is, and
Yep.
it is terrifying.
But it's also a good place. Look at all the good people in the chat.
It is, yes.
People touching money, so those are good people too.
We have amazing people, but yeah, that's one of the things I would love to talk about. Female serial killers would be fantastic. I would love to cover cults as well. I think that would be an interesting one. We were going to talk a little bit about Manson as well, weren't we? Because I know you know a lot about him.
Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but I do know that he was. I had mentioned earlier the Church of the Final Judgment. That's actually from your territory. I don't know if you remember that. They were a group that did a lot of charity work, and they were trying to impress people. They wore black robes and their little satanic patch on their shoulders. But they were always doing good things. People didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. It was very, very, and it's one of those cult things you can talk about. It was very, very dark, where they would murder and in some case, human sacrifice for the most part, and in some case, some cannibalistic ritual cannibalism. And they had influences on the people that we talked about earlier, which I didn't know that one killer that you brought up had Seville ties, but it seemed a breeding ground at the time. I don't know if there was bad gas floating around in England at the time that was warping a few people, but that final judgment ended up in the United States, and this is where our fellow gets involved. He followed the church briefly, learned some things about cult practices, how to manipulate and have mind control. And when he set up his group, he called them a family, similar to like the church did. And he had, it was, the hippie age was, everyone was, at least a lot of them were thinking of communes and beautiful life and alternate ways of thinking. And apparently for some of them, they thought he was very charismatic. And he got tied in with, I'm having a horrible time with names. Sorry, I've never been good with names. But with the Beach Boys, one of the people of the Beach Boys, and he even stayed at their house. So people thought him as a celebrity, and he abused this Beach Boy guy, took his money, did all kinds of, just playing off of the guy's good graces, used him for paying medical bills for some of the girls that were following him, Charles Manson. And then he set up his commune, and that's when the satanic part of it set in.
Yes, was it Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys?
Yes, that's the one.
Yep.
Also, and this is where the CIA ties are, they developed a drug in Germany way back when that several different countries decided, oh, this is pretty cool, we can use this. LSD. If you go to Jim Jones, you'll find that the LSD, and it's documented that was used there, was CIA issued. They even had a CIA rep there. To me, it was a big op. It wasn't just a church. There was a lot of dark things going behind it. But the same source was also used for Charlie in his group. So there were connections. They were doing tests on these people to see what they can get away with. And the satanic part of it, Roland Pulaski, his wife was murdered. There was a satanic ritual involved there, which most people don't realize. It was similar to like the Rosemary Baby situation. She didn't want to give up the child for sacrifice. He left the country for various different reasons, including abusing the little girl.
Yes.
And they set her up along with the people that were there. And it was ritual murders. You could find some of the images, the way they were hanged, drinking of blood, various different things. Yeah, he was sick, twisted, and like I said, for some reason, this Final Judgment Church and a few of the others that were tied loosely to it, it all started back then. Weird. But I think in most cases, in my mind, and I can't pin down because, a lot of these things either aren't true or the actual documentation we can't get because the people behind it won't share for obvious reasons. Yeah, Sharon Tate. I think the organization in my country, the CIA, has done some really, really horrific things. And I think it was their doing just to see what they could get away with.
Yeah.
Things. But that's my own personal belief.
Yes, seeing how far people could be pushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just needed, as you say, this right mix of people, and Manson had the charisma, and he had the to be a leader. And he also had his own crazy ideas of trying to incite a race war. That's
Yeah.
what he wanted.
Yep, he wanted all the white people to be killed except for him, and he was going to be the ruler and the teacher of the black people when the race war was ended.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually searching for Armageddon.
Yes, and I think it's worth mentioning that he is actually, isn't he one of the few people that was ever it's murder by proxy, because he himself never technically killed anybody, but he incited others to do so.
Right. Yeah, and one of his big things, one of his key words was when you do it witchy.
Yes.
Hence the hanging by one leg and the gutting in certain ways.
Yes, and painting on the walls and messages on the walls. Yeah, it was all symbolic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just another twisted one, but like you said, he did it by proxy. He incited other people to do it, and he still has followers now.
He does. I think we talked about this last week. The bizarre trend that these killers have, the popularity that they get, especially among women, once they get caught. We talked about Richard Ramirez and his groupies. Manson, pretty much throughout his life had, he was incredibly popular. He was even married.
Right. And D-Bob, he is dead, but he still has groupies.
Yeah, there's still people that follow him. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I think that's says a hell of a lot about society and people in general.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking of starting this little secret society. Anyone want to join?
The cult of Odysee.
I'll supply the drugs. Don't ask where they come from.
Do we have cool robes as well? You've got to,
Drink the Kool-Aid.
Oh my gosh. I just saw a really good comment as well. The thad that shouldn't be. Good to see you. He says pretty much every nation's covert forces do horrible things, and that's the history of nations existing on the earth, not a modern thing. I agree with that absolutely. Yeah, I don't think there's any country in the world who doesn't do terrible things behind the scenes.
Should see some of the medieval woodcuts. I'm not going to pick on religions, but go look at some of the religious medieval woodcuts.
That's insane. And I think that would be another good topic as well to cover, really digging back into history, because you mentioned Elizabeth Bathory. I'd be curious to see how far we could go back to find cases of what we would now call serial killers. So,
yeah, I thought about doing that too. That's actually a good idea. One of these months we'll do that. Because this is a monthly show, right? You're not going to do this every week.
No, I'm not going to do this every week. No,
I cry at night every time we do these.
I think we disturb people enough once a month. But yeah, that would be a really good topic as well to cover. Like I said, I know this is a very dark topic that we talk about, and it's one that we don't generally cover here, but it's one that I find fascinating, and I love to take a walk on the dark side every now and again. And I can't think of
teenage sexual assault.
Exactly.
Sorry, that's an inside joke. I told her something about something long ago.
He did. We're not gonna say what it is on air, but yes.
I did nothing wrong. Don't get your ideas go buzzing in your head.
And Dave Bob says Adega said the same thing. Yes. Well, what can I say? Great minds think alike, and I couldn't think of a better panel that we have to talk about this. So thank you guys. I really appreciate this. So before we wrap up and let people have the rest of their Wednesday and get on with the rest of the day, is there anything in particular that you would really like to cover next week, or shall we kind of talk next month rather? Got me talking weekly now.
Oh, no, I'm looking. I think I got an acolyte in Haster. You're going to be the first one on the pulpit. He's all for it. You get the purple robe. Everyone gets black.
Robes are always cool. And Salty Texas Sea says, not forget Mao and the Khmer Rouge. Yeah, we could definitely talk about that. I would put that under, cults, I think. I know technically it wasn't a cult, but it was a cult of personality. So I think when we talk about that, that will come into it. And great to see you, Winter Hands. Good evening. Dave Bob says Pol Pot as well. Yes. Pasta Hasta.
Done.
It's got a good ring to it.
Everyone will have a black robe with my hand symbol on the back of it without the adega. That'd be cool.
That would be fantastic. See, we've got it all ready to go. Well, I had to get you back for saying how excited I was talking about stabbing and strangling.
Yeah, but you are very good at it. It's just enthusiasm and your word should.
I thank you. I appreciate that. I can't help it. If there's a subject that I find fascinating, it just kind of comes out. Whether I'm talking about comics or serial killers, if I find it interesting, the enthusiasm just kind of bubbles to the surface.
You got a good group here. Thank you for letting me hang out with you guys.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Like I said, I couldn't think of a better panel to have to talk about this, so I really appreciate it. Spike in Madness, hello, love. He says a dark congregation. Hasta says Cult of the Blue Hand. That sounds like a band. That's awesome.
That's actually a real hand too. I just elongated it.
I always wondered where that came from.
That's an underexposed X-ray. I like to call her my adopted daughter. She used to work for us, and she's like family. And I took it, and then I put the X-ray up on glass, and then took a picture of it at an angle. So that's her hand distorted.
That is fascinating. I always wondered where it came from, but what the meaning behind it was. I always loved it. It always looks very effective.
My kid.
Oh my gosh, guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and big thank you to Adega for being such a fantastic co-host. Absolutely loved getting to talk serial killers today, and we've barely scratched the surface. I think down the line we could probably do a part 2, and we'd have to talk Son of Sam and the Night Stalker and all these a lot more famous, I think, American serial killers as well. But I'm really glad that we kind of stayed away from those today and picked 2 from very different countries. So I think this works incredibly well.
Yeah. Well, plus if the panel had more people, and no unfortunate circumstances led it to where we're missing a couple people this week. But I wanted to make sure I got the mental aspect, which the case I brought up was great, but I wanted to leave the other stuff open in case somebody else picked one of the more common ones. Like there was the one who had the murder house. He was the copycat of the prairie people that did that. H.H. Holmes, yes.
Yes.
So there's leave those. I wanted to leave those open for other people, but still, there's a lot of ground to cover. There's a lot of funky, dark stuff out there.
There is, absolutely. I think we definitely need a part 2 for the male serial killers, which will come down the line. But guys, we will have a talk. We will get together with the rest of our awesome panel and decide what we like to do. And guys, if you've got any suggestions, let us know in the comments below. That would be fantastic if there's something that you would like us to cover, because we really love getting to talk about this, as you can tell with the enthusiasm in my voice.
Yeah. Just don't go near her neighborhood, especially at night. She doesn't sleep.
She just wanders around. It's really weird. Yeah.
Right. If you hear the heels, you know it's too late.
Yes.
Just lay down and take it.
if I could ever take anybody out, it would be an absolute miracle. But yes. And Winterhand says the apology line is worth diving into. I will look into that. Thank you. And Sadaku says, I must say we've not had a good serial killer in a while. Yep, the most recent one was, for us at least, the one that we talked about, which was the Suffolk Strangler. But I think because of the way that, police investigate now, I think it's a lot harder for serial killers to get away with as many and be as prolific as they are, or as they have been in the past.
I have to agree. Yeah.
All hail the morbid Valkyrie.
Yeah, you've seen her collection behind her when she has the camera on. She definitely has the dark side in her.
Oh yes, I've got a lot of interesting books on that shelf. If anyone's ever paused and read some of the titles, definitely there's some interesting reads behind me, which is why I put them there, just to confuse people, especially when I'm talking about happy things. And let me say,
I just have to try this because I heard it last night. Wakasashi.
Yes, nailed it. Absolutely.
I have a friend who lives in Nagoya, and he tried to teach me some of it, but I think I've forgotten over the years.
Yes, great to see you, Gray. Good to see you. And the fact that Shouldn't Be says you should do a show about known serial killers who've not been identified. That would be a good one.
Yeah, well, there's Jack.
Yeah, exactly. Zodiac, technically, although they said they'd found the name, it was actually debunked recently. So We're back to square one with who Zodiac actually was.
Right.
So yeah, that's a great idea, guys. Keep these ideas coming. I absolutely love getting to do this show. I was thrilled when people said that they were interested, and as you can see, I'm having a absolute blast talking about it. So, guys, a massive thank you to author, doctor, extraordinaire Adega Outlaw, guys.
Thank me. You snap your fingers. I'm here. That's the way it is.
Well, I anytime that we get to hang out, I'm always honored. So thank you, guys. If you are not subscribed to Adega, please do. But before we go, what have you got coming up?
I'll have news soon. You've seen some of it. You people don't realize. I know that she's very well read, and she's very. She likes the work I've done. At least that's what she keeps telling me, and I find it hard to believe considering all the things that she's read. So I have picked her brain for various different things, and most recently is some of my work is actually going to come out through Kindle on hardback for a while, and then it's going.
Cannot wait to get those.
And I associate with some people that are really good artists, and also. Purple can attest, the good books, the really good books that you like to have on your shelf are the ones that have that little extra touch of class.
Yes.
They have pronunciation guides, they have pictures, they have various different things that make not just the experience reading, but also having something that gives it the wow factor. Psycho came close to it. So she's helped me. I've decided to put in with one of my works some maps, an overall map, and then it divided up. That should be coming out. I just have to clear some tax ID stuff with Kindle because for payment for things, the way they do it, they have to have all that stuff set, and it takes them 2 months to do it. So when that's done, I'm going to start rolling out for short periods of time the hardbacks, and then we'll have soft cover or paperbacks for the rest of them, but everything's going to come out. And there's someone in our realm of influence, Eastland Brookholder, who he's a small channel, but he's a smart guy. He brought up to my attention Brian Sanderson, those of you who know his works.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
he had mentioned recently that if he had to do it all again, he would go independent. He wouldn't use a publisher. And I thought, okay, this guy's making a ton of money, and he writes similar to what I do because he can write really quick. So I think I'm going to do it that way. And Kindle and Amazon came up a way to shortcut all these different publishers, which still makes it rewarding because it didn't used to be the way it was before, but it makes it rewarding to authors. So that's why I'm doing this. So that's what one of the things coming up. And then you can catch my chapter by chapter, 3 different works that I'm working on simultaneously, trying to anyway, on my channel. If you want digital of some of my works, just go to adegaoutlaw.com.
Yes, the link will be in the description below, guys. So please check that out.
Yeah, or you can, most people say they want to have it in their hand, so, or you can wait. I'm not really interested in money. I'm like with the rest of you, because your stream last night on Salty Texan, just hearing so many people, because it's on all kinds of different channels, and I try not to circle in one fishbowl. I try and jump from artists, authors, all over the place. And the same thing sounds out in almost every community, is that the IP, or the people that are presenting new IP, have a twisted sense of what reality is. Where a hero you have to identify with as being a villain, or a villain you have to identify with having a cause for being bad. Just mixed up. My stuff isn't like that. My stuff is based on real people, and I'm with the rest of you. I would prefer to have things that are more representative of reality and not someone's deranged fantasy or self-inserting. So that's my stuff. But I'm glad to be associated with a group like you guys, everyone here, because I've watched the comments. I've been to several of your channels, and I am honored to have found people like you.
We're honored that you're with us as well.
Makes me feel good for humanity.
It is heartening, isn't it? Yes, to see so many people saying the same thing.
Yep.
So, guys, we have got a heck of a lot to come. As you can see, Dega is working incredibly hard as well. So please, I've just popped his link in the description as well. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to him. You will love his work. I do. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't believe me. So I'm going to tell him again.
She's always nice to me, so it's hard to accept compliments from some people. But thank you.
You are very welcome. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Absolutely loved getting to do this. I cannot wait for the next show. As I said, if there is anything that you'd like us to cover, let us know. But in the meantime, let me say a huge thank you to my co-host, Adega Outlaw.
Thank you.
Let me say a massive thank you to everybody joining us in the chat today. You guys were absolutely on fire as always. Thank you to everybody who sent super chats and stream elements. Really appreciate that, guys. Thank you so very much. Love getting to do this and couldn't do it without you. We have got another big stream coming up on Friday. So if anybody would like to join for that, I would absolutely love to have you. It's going to be slightly later than I usually do. I think it's going to be 12 Central that I will do it. So we've got a few guests joining, and we're going to have a little bit of a celebration. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, she doesn't do the stalking of victims on her birthday. So
no, that's the one day when you guys are safe. Exactly.
It's okay to come out at night.
And thank you, TZ Burton. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And Neos Evans, great to see you as well, sweetheart. Hello. So, guys, hope to see you very soon. Take care of each other and stay out of the dark, I think is the best way to say it. Take care, everybody.
Bye.